Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ down there in Tequila, Georgia. My good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, is here. Matt Green, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It's good to be back with you. Hope you and yours had a good Christmas celebration. But yeah, it's good to be back, man.
It was good. It was nice. Got down. It was a shorter trip. Back to Atlanta for a couple days, but it was nice. Took some PTO earlier this week. I'm taking PTO on Friday. Just kind of getting through it. It's just a weird week. I will say the death of bowl season has been tough during this. So I'm like watching different games and watching 90 Day Fiance the other way with my wife and taking notes and reading stuff. And I'm like, it's just sad. We talked about it on last week's show, but I'm like, I think Texas A&M was down to their like 4-string quarterback in this game because their third stringer got hurt on like the first play. And you're like, what are we doing? And then you have Florida State and Georgia having like 50 players in total at this point not play in the Florida State Georgia game.
Well, I mean, that's mainly just Florida State. I think Georgia's only got like 2 opt-outs. It's basically just Florida State's like 20 guys or something, and all the transfers and all that.
I'm including transfers as the opt-outs, like for Georgia.
Oh yeah. The portal is what's gonna totally doom the playoff. Or not the playoff, the bowl season. If they don't do something, you're just not gonna have enough guys to field a roster.
Yeah.
Like, especially what Deion's doing every year, signing 6 players and getting like 50 in the portal. Like, I don't know. It's bizarre.
It is bizarre. We annoyed a lot of Florida fans, Matt Green, on the YouTube page. A lot of Florida fans did not like our bashing of the Florida Gators recruiting day on National Signing Day on our YouTube channel.
Were we bashing Florida? I felt like it's reality. Like 2 months ago, they were like, okay, Billy Napier's the next guy. Like, he's leading us to the promised land. Right now, it's like, might as well just fire him. Like, I think I don't know if all Florida fans are that negative. You know, maybe there's still some hope. It's just 2 years. It wasn't necessarily a quick rebuild. You know, there was some infrastructure, some foundational issues that need to be taken care of at Florida, but I don't know. It's just hard to see what's the term? It's hard to see the forest through the trees. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't see it getting better for the Gators, but sorry, not sorry. I guess that's not I would imagine a Georgia and Tennessee fan, we might not make a lot of friends down in Gainesville, Florida.
Hey, the one thing they said, and Tennessee fans have to accept it, is, hey, Florida still owns you, even on our worst days, was a comment below. And oh yeah, Knoxville, Napier beat you this year. I mean, fair points. Like, I'm a Tennessee guy. Hey, Napier's 2-1 against Heupel.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, 1-1.
1-1, excuse me. Yeah.
2 years. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing they have going for them, is that they somehow still have Tennessee's number. But I don't know. Hey, maybe if you're in Gainesville, it might feel a little bit better. You can see, we got some guys. Guys are transferring because, they're not going to have as much playing time because we have such a loaded roster. I don't know. However you justify it to yourself. But man, early signing day just was not kind to them. And the recruiting class was just so strong for so long. When you don't have the on-field results you want, it's easy to be like, okay, he's a new guy. Look how well he's recruiting. And now that you don't have that to fall back on, it's a little hard. It's a little harder to be positive about the Napier era.
Absolutely. But we'll see what happens for the Florida Gators. That's another pod on another day, Matt Green. Before we get into just our college football show here on the Chase Thomas podcast, Matt Green, what was your favorite gift you received, and your favorite gift that you got your significant other this Christmas season?
To be honest about that. But yeah, we don't exchange gifts, but so I didn't really get anything for Christmas. My mom got me a couple Georgia cups, the standard Georgia calendar. but and some good old cash money, So, I'm like, my mom every year asks me for like a list and stuff. Like, oh, what do you want? I'm just like, I'm a 30 whatever year old man. I just feel weird giving my mom a list of things I want for Christmas. Like, I don't know. It's just it's not my thing.
Hold on. Why did you dodge how old you are? Why did you say 30 something? You paused
because I honestly blanked. What am I about to be 34?
Okay.
But yeah, so Tori went all out for the nieces and nephews though, with just like gifts inside of gifts, just all kinds of wrapping. It was not like big stuff, but just like coconut water. Like these kids would just be like, coconut water, like fruit strips were like wrapped up. It was like, but it would just be like little cars and just different little things. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Like the avocado kid.
Yeah, something like that.
It's an
I don't
avocado.
know. These kids like coconut water for whatever reason, and it was just it's almost like a garnish in their present. It's just kind of like there. It's like it's not the present, but it's like on top of the present. Because I guess whenever Tori sees the little nieces and nephews, she always has like little fruit strips or something to give them. So they're like, I don't know. It's their thing. It's their love language. But yeah, so that's always a lot of fun with the little nieces and nephews.
There you go.
What about you, man? What's your Christmas highlight?
I was really happy. I got 2 big winners that Sam was a big fan about. So I got her I adopted a river otter on her behalf through the WWF. So they sent this whole care package and where it is, and just the whole, they sent like a little stuffed animal, river otter, but it's not actual like stuffed animal, but like the little things, little fur babies. And
where is this river otter?
We don't like it's in the whole pamphlet. So they send a whole pamphlet. It's really awesome. Like the WWF does a great job. So they sent this whole thing, but I got it in her name and all that, and it's like you're an official donor and all that kind of stuff, and helping out the river otters. So that was a big hit. And because we have a lot of river otters up here on the Tennessee River, and here in Tennessee we've seen them.
So it's in Knoxville. A Tennessee river otter. Is that?
That'd be cool if we saw them. Like I want to believe. Well, I want to believe the one that we saw is the one that we're sponsoring and keeping going, because we're big river otter fans and really just big animal fans, as you and Tori can relate with Zeus and
big animal guy.
Yeah, big animal guy. And then I got speaking of the animal stuff, I got Samantha also a house like for the front porch, kind of for feral cats to go into when it's cold. So a little like, it's not like an igloo, but like a little house they can go into when it's cold outside and get warm, and put some blankets in there, and got that in there. So it's a little IKEA build for the front porch. So for the feral cats in the neighborhood, and rabbits can also go in there in the summer to stay away from the hawks, which is going to be a big hit. So I had some pretty good ones. There's some big winners.
To each their own, sir. I'm not trying to have a bunch of cats around my house, but hey, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Green. Well, before we get into what we're going to end up talking about here on this edition of the program, Matt Green, don't forget, folks, you can check us out on YouTube, as we talked about at the top of this show, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe today. Well over 1.6 thousand subs on the YouTube page. Been a really, really big week on that front, so I appreciate you guys watching on that. And if you're watching that right now on this YouTube page, first, thank you, and make sure you're subscribed. New podcasts going up on this channel each and every day, but it's also Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where you get your podcasts. Make sure, if you are a frequent listener of this show and you like it and you've not already done so, make sure you leave this show a 5-star rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If that is indeed how you are listening, you can also email us with any college football questions over at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. Check out the homepage, all kinds of great content and links and all the good information about this very show at chasethomaspodcast.com. Check that out. Today, Matt Green, great news, Matt Green. It's Nico time in Tennessee, officially. Talking about bowl stuff.
What if he gets hurt? What are they going to do?
I mean, you're going true freshman, or I guess you'd probably go in the portal at that point. Then you really will get a portal quarterback if that were to happen going into next year, Matt Green. But look, it's time. It was the worst kept secret in Knoxville the last week or so, but it's official and it's exciting. I do think they kind of missed the boat here in terms of getting like a crazy Vol caravan to the Citrus Bowl, because if you announce this, like Joe announces he's opting out and preparing for the NFL draft, like even like 2 weeks ago, that gives Tennessee fans, a lot of Tennessee fans who were on the fence about going down to Orlando to watch Nico's first start, they're all going because the hype here is the most hyped quarterback since Peyton Manning here. And I mean, there's only been three other quarterbacks ever in Tennessee history to start bowl games as true freshmen. And do you know who those three are? I'll give you a hint, Matt Green. They are all over the last 30 years.
Three true freshmen to start a bowl game for Tennessee?
Before Nico. Mm-hmm.
Probably Peyton Manning.
That's one.
Probably Eric Ainge.
That is wrong.
Is he a redshirt freshman? Mm-hmm. What's his name? Clausen?
Casey Clausen.
Casey. I guess I got to specify Casey. That is what I meant. Tyler Bray.
Tyler Bray.
That's the last one?
And one more.
I thought you said 3 and then Nico.
Or 4 and then Nico, excuse me.
4 and then Nico. Wait, Guarantano?
Nope.
Josh Dobbs?
Josh Dobbs.
Ah, okay. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Did pretty well on that. Is that what the story they're going with? Joe Milton opted out to prepare for the draft?
Yeah, I mean, he's still playing. Like, he's still, I mean,
why would he opt out of this bowl game? I think Joe Milton needs one more good game on tape. Like, they benched Joe Milton, then went with Nico. That's what really happened.
No, I mean, Joe's like, he played his best game his last game against Vanderbilt. Like, that was the best Joe Milton's ever played. Like, he was not going to top that. There's no point in him playing at this point. Like, a bunch of guys are opting out. Jabari Small, Jalen Wright won't be playing, so your top 2 running backs are out. The offensive line's banged up, but Cooper and some company are going to play. But ultimately, I just don't think bowl season has that when you're not in a playoff. Like, Joe would play if it was a playoff game, but it's not. So I think a lot of guys just look at it as like, hey, I'm going to get ready for the draft. I don't want to get hurt. Like, Joe, a big part of the draft process for him is going to be his measurables and being able to do stuff. Because, I mean, Hendon wasn't able to do stuff this past year, and he and Hendon were close, and Hendon tearing his ACL in the South Carolina game kind of messed some stuff up for him going into NFL draft time and not being able to do a lot of the stuff that
maybe he'll throw it. Maybe he'll throw it through the roof of the indoor practice facility, and that'll go viral.
Well, look, man, Joe, great dude, great teammate. It was a tough year. It's tough for a lot of reasons. It wasn't just Joe. There were issues all across the board with this offense. But look, he stuck it through. He's the guy who stayed. Good teammate. Was there for Nico. He's been helping out this year, reportedly, or this week, getting Nico ready to start this bowl game against Iowa. A great Iowa defense. So it's not like this is going to be an easy opener here for Nico. It's going to be a feisty defense. It's going to get after him with Parker's group on that side of the ball for the Hawkeyes. So I'm very curious to see how Nico does. But either way, like, it makes the bowl game in Monday afternoon 10 times more interesting because it's nothing. No offense against Joe, but like, this is game 1. Like, this is huge. Like, this is a good defense, a good team overall, and we're going to see how Nico performs with a lot of guys who he will be back next year. A lot of the offensive line's back. The whole offensive line basically is back going into next year. A lot of these receivers will be back next year. His 2 lead backs in this game will be his 2 lead backs next year, and Cam Seldon and Dylan Sampson. So there's going to be a lot to glean from this game. So I'm 10 times more interested in how this game unfolds and how Tennessee looks. Like, we'll see if this offense pops. Then it was like, heck, it was a little bit more Joe than we let on as to why this offense really fell off in terms of just offensive production, scoring points, and that sort of thing over the course of the year. Or if Nico struggles or the offense kind of sputters a little bit, then it's like, hey, maybe it wasn't just a Joe thing. Maybe there are a lot of issues with
and
where
I think
this
that's
offense
like
is at.
I feel like that's what bowl games like would you have to be most excited about.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a showcase for the next season. It's almost
Yes.
like a glorified spring game that
Yes.
like, okay, this will give us an idea of a little something we have next year. And it's like, that's better than nothing. But, we're just, there was a time where this was a nice, like, cigar for your overall season. And you get like a 10-11 win season, you win a New Year's Six bowl, that's that's an accomplishment. And now, it's, yeah, we'll see what this team is next year.
Yeah, but it's something that gets you psyched, right? Like if it looks really good and Nico balls out, then you're like, oh, we're all pumped. And you're going into next year with all kinds of momentum. You're feeling good about the quarterback spot. You're feeling good about where the offense is going to be. It might help a spring portal and recruiting if Nico is able to flash here in this game for guys who are maybe like Evan Stewart. He's out there in the portal. If Evan Stewart sees Nico ball out with his Tennessee ties, that make him look at Tennessee a little bit harder. So there's other areas there's other things at play here depending on how Nico performs.
No, that's true. And every bowl game is different. Like, I mean, you can take something like just there's so much context with every game. Like if Georgia goes out and beats Florida State by 4 touchdowns, absolutely nothing will be learned from that. But if Florida State goes out there and takes Georgia to overtime with none of their starters, it's like, okay, this was something like for Florida State, so it's like a couple years ago when Georgia lost to Texas in the Sugar Bowl with a few opt-outs. It's like you hate to lose to anybody, but, the game really, is the team as up for that game as they are for the previous game? There's guys that are opted out, but then the following year when you beat Baylor with about 12 opt-outs, it was like, okay, well, this actually was a game we got excited about because we won kind of shorthanded. So, it kind of depends on the context of the game, but yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see to finally take that shiny new toy off the shelf and they'll play with it in a real game.
No, I don't disagree, sir. On the flip side, though, your team got a big commitment, the number 1 running back in the portal, and Trevor Etienne. What does Trevor Etienne going to Georgia mean for the Georgia Bulldogs running back room in 2024, Matt Green?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. You look at Georgia's roster now. I mean, on the offensive side, you got a Missouri transfer at wide receiver. They brought in London Humphreys from Vanderbilt. Like you just brought in a South Carolina defensive lineman. Now you're bringing in a Florida running back on top of a Miami wide receiver too, and a Mississippi State wide receiver from a year ago. So Georgia's really just going all over the SEC to fill their skill positions. And Trevor Etienne, I don't think he's a superstar by any means. I was a little surprised that you said he's number 1 running back in the portal. I think Raheem Sanders is probably better if we're splitting hairs, but Trevor Etienne, I think he's a dynamic player, and Georgia as well as they've recruited and everything, and they have good players. It feels like the past 2 seasons, like Kenny McIntosh was a stud. So outside of like James Cook and Zamir White, like they weren't Sony Michel and Nick Chubb and DeAndre Swift or anything, but those were 2 good players, like very good players that were drafted, 2nd, 4th round in the NFL. This 2023 team just didn't have that in the backfield. Dejon Edwards is a good player. He just doesn't have that top end speed. Kendall Milton seems to have all the talent in the world, but he just can't stay healthy. And that at some point, that's all that matters. So there was something lacking. Branson Robinson showed a little bit, and obviously he missed the whole season. And, it wouldn't surprise me if Etienne comes in and has roughly the same numbers he did at Florida and kind of splits carries. He's not like a clear number 1 guy at Georgia just because the way they kind of tend to spread the wealth. And I think Georgia has recruited really well, and they'll bring in 3 true freshmen in this class, including Nate Frazier, I think is the number 1 running back according to some. So Georgia's running back depth is definitely going to be, or running back just group, I think is going to be deeper next year. And Etienne is definitely the most proven, I think, of the bunch.
It's interesting because it's just a different era, right? Like Georgia's got a really just versatile room. Like how would you view next year? Like if you had to guess what the rotation looks like, I obviously will see, but I mean, they're pretty much done in terms of portaling and recruiting on the running back side. So what would you estimate is going to be the running back room? And also what would you prefer it to look like going into
Well,
next year.
do we know if Dejon Edwards is back? I think he's got eligibility, but it can almost be like an Elijah Holyfield situation. Like, this is probably the best season you're gonna have, like, just based on the circumstances. But he just doesn't seem like a top end, like an NFL running back or anything. But he was a good player, so you're gonna lose Milton. I think you're gonna lose Edwards. Etienne, I think, has to be. I think he's the most proven running back in that group. And then, like I said, with Branson Robinson, he's probably second, but obviously he's got to come back. It was an ACL, right, that he tore. So, he's got to come back from that. And then Roderick Robinson, pretty unproven as a true freshman. Andrew Paul, another one who got hurt as a freshman in 2022 and came back in this year. And, he barely played. So there's a lot of unproven guys in Georgia's backfield. I mean, that's why Dylan Bell came in and honestly was one of the more impressive running backs. Cash Jones, you got to throw out there, the walk on. But yeah, I think the three true freshmen, I think any of those guys, if they're a real playmaker, I think they could definitely get ticks next year because it's a pretty unproven backfield. But I think Etienne, he doesn't necessarily have to carry the load, but he's definitely the most proven coming in.
Yeah, and it's also, we just don't really know. Like this, it's interesting, like how the Georgia just running back room has shifted and just how we view them. Like it's going to be a multitude of guys. Like it's just not going to be a lead back and just this power run through. They're not going to be a run first offense. Like you look at where they're looking in the portal, right? Like you mentioned, they get the Miami kid. They bring in Dominic Levick last year. You bring in Rara Thomas last year. I mean, you're going to be very portal heavy in your skill position guys. You obviously target the tight ends a bunch, so it'll be Lawson and Delp a lot in the tight end spots. And you see early pictures of Jaden Riddell, and he's gigantic, so I wouldn't doubt on him finding his way into the field sooner rather than later in Georgia. But it's just they're a pass-first team now, but they also are going to be loaded in the backfield with options with Frazier, with Etienne, with even Dylan Bell, who can go back there if he wants to. There's options, but like you said, Dejon Edwards, I just don't see him having a better year than what he just had at Georgia if he comes back for another year. I think this running back room is going to be really crowded for him to stay in front, especially with Robinson too coming back from injury.
For sure, and I feel like there's this one one section of Georgia fans that are like obsessed with tight ends that have just always been like, get the tight end the ball. That's what we need to do. We got just good tight end. It's like very rarely is a tight end the best playmaker on your team. So no, I don't care about the tight end. Get it to those dynamic receivers. For the last 3 years, Georgia's best playmaker has been a tight end, and that's why they fed the tight end. So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of how they use their weapons next year because Brock Bowers is doing a lot of slot receiver stuff. He was doing a lot of running back stuff. So they're going to have some of these guys step into his role. And I mean, we know how Georgia recruits. They get some big time players. So I think they'll have, I don't know who the guys are going to be necessarily. It's a lot of like Rosemy Jack Saint is going to be gone. So he was one of the leading receivers. McConkey possibly could be back. He could be gone. So.
That man, they just need to send him on. Like, sir, you're not going to be able to walk by the time you get the NFL if you come back for another year, sir. Like, you've been banged up the last 2 years going into the end of the year. It's time to move on, lad.
You exaggerate how much he's been hurt. He literally, I didn't miss like any games in 2022.
Well, hold on. I'm not saying I'm not saying he was hurt the whole time. I'm saying the last 2 years he has finished hobbled and broken at the University of Georgia.
I would say this year he was hurt coming into the season and he was kind of hobbled a lot of the year. But so I would argue his stock is not as high as it was coming into the 2023 as it is coming out of 2023. So, he could easily come back and with Carson Beck, with the rapport he's got with a returning starting quarterback, and easily have a better season. Brock Bowers is gone. Like there's a lot of touches to go around with a guy like Bowers being gone. So, I wouldn't guarantee that McConkey is gone. So, and with how many years some of these guys are playing, I think he's still got something left. But obviously, I think he would be drafted if he goes pro. So, we'll see.
Oh, yeah. I've seen Ladd in the first round by some mocks. Like, Ladd's a type of receiver who should...
Ladd's not going in the first round. What?
Ladd's a kind of... he's like one of those dudes who, if he's healthy, like, he's going to produce at the NFL level. Like,
if
Ladd
he goes
McConkey,
to the combine and runs like a 4.3 flat or something, then yeah, maybe he goes in like the second round. But I think he's a good piece, but he doesn't seem like a guy that's better than like a third, fourth round at best.
I mean, second round would not surprise me with Ladd McConkey at all.
Hey, I love it. I love Ladd McConkey. So
December 9th, I'm looking at this right now. He's
it.
projected to go 56th overall.
Hey, I'm here for it. He deserves it, but I don't know. So he could be gone, and so Georgia could be replacing Bowers and McConkey next year. So,
but the whole point is like this is why you brought in Dominic Lovett. This is why you paid to bring in Lovett. Like he should fill that spot. Like it's. I feel like Don Draper with Mad Men. That's what the money is for. Like Dominic Lovett should step up and be that guy, and you shouldn't miss a beat.
What are you talking about? He's trying to eat. We're paying Dominic Lovett to get him to come to Georgia. Is that
what I'm saying is like that's how portaling is. Like portals, that's what it is. Like a lot of it is just I
think a lot of it's transferring to a better situation and getting better playing time and getting with a better ticks, more touches, whatever the case may be. Like I think Georgia's just better than Missouri, and if Georgia wants you, you'll bounce on Missouri.
I don't know. Missouri's pretty feisty this year, Matt Green.
I mean
he
Georgia
made the wrong
better
choice.
than Missouri, like.
Well, no, he
Georgia's
had a worse season. Like Dominic Lovett
Missouri.
made a bad decision going to Georgia. Like as of right now, Dominic Lovett made a bad career choice because he was a much better player. He led the SEC the year prior at Mizzou. Luther Burden obviously just had a great year at Mizzou. Cody Schrader had a great year.
Huh? He didn't have as good as stats, but that's debatable that he made a bad career choice.
Well, I mean, he had a worse year. Like he was featured significantly less. Though. I mean, he should have stayed at Mizzou
with better players.
Yeah, that's why you. That's why you stay.
Still better than him.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Like, that was one where I was like, what was wrong with your situation? You're featured, you get Luther Burden with you, y'all are both going to put up great numbers, and you're going to go in the NFL. Like, what do you... I never understood that one. I mean,
Georgia's better. He can play at Georgia.
Receivers don't play well. Like, those big-time receivers just don't... No, they're just not.
But that's what you're not... You're losing me. They don't... It's not like they don't play well. They don't put up huge numbers, but like, they had a tight end that was putting up huge numbers.
But that's my point. He knew Brock Bowers was there. He knew the offense. And he still made the jump. I'm saying it was a bad career move for him to go from Mizzou to Georgia. And as of right now, it's been a huge miss for him. Not for Georgia, because Georgia was a great team and was one of the best teams in college football all year. But Dominic Lovett specifically was an L. Ra Thomas, I think, was a win. I think that was a better career move for him. And I think
but he had way worse stats than he did the year before at Mississippi State.
Ra-Ra's going to start, though, next year. And I mean,
Lovett he'll play just as much as Ra Thomas, if not more.
I don't know. Who would you bet on to have a better year? I bet on Ra over Lovett next year.
I mean, Lovett had a significantly better year this year. I mean, I think he was second among the receivers in yards this year.
Did it feel like it, Matt Green?
I mean, part of it, though, is everyone doesn't count Brock Bowers as a receiver. So it's like, it's weird having these conversations with people like social media, like people cherry picking like Georgia's wide receiver production. It's like, yeah, but they had a tight end that had like double-digit touchdowns, like 800 yards or something. You know what I mean? And he missed multiple games. So I don't know. I think Georgia, obviously, his stats were going to get worse at Georgia, but I think that's kind of part of the Georgia thing. You kind of buy into the team, and maybe you don't get the stats, but you're getting developed and all of that. So I mean, They preach the whole team thing. Your stats are going to take a hit. It's just not really Georgia's thing. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say he's taking an L. Like, I mean, yeah,
1 catch, 9 yards against Tennessee, 2 catches, 23 yards against Alabama, 4 catches, 33 yards against Mizzou. He did have a TD there. I don't know. It was okay. Better year though, significantly. He almost doubled his yardage the year prior and averaged 15 yards a catch at Mizzou. I don't know. We'll see how he does next year. But
yeah, I mean,
as of right now,
wasn't as good of definitely not as good as stats for sure.
Matt Green, the college football, or before we get into the college football playoff, the top 10, the Matt Green power poll. We were thinking about different things we were going to do this offseason as we gear up.
Power poll.
Yeah, the Matt Green power poll here. The best 10 teams, Matt
power
Green.
poll.
The Matt Green power poll. The best teams this year were who? I'm curious from Matt Green, the college football analyst, the best 10 teams for you in the Matt Green power poll this year, Matt Green. 10 through 1. How do you do it?
I feel like people overthink these power rankings. rankings here. I'm just going. You're not gonna like this. I'm not gonna overthink this. It's gonna look very similar to the current rankings, but this is what the rankings should look like. The current rankings. You may start. Did I lose you?
No, I'm listening.
You may start at 1 or start at 10.
Start at 10. We're going 10-1.
All right, let's start at 10. At number 10, we got Ole Miss. Just missing the top 10 we get is Penn State. You look at Ole Miss and Penn State, two teams, both went 10-2. One loss to Georgia and Alabama, one loss to Michigan and Ohio State. Very similar there, but after that, Penn State just doesn't have a key win. It's like Iowa. I guess that's the best team they beat. Ole Miss at least has the wins over Tulane and beat LSU. So we got Ole Miss at 10. At number 9, we got Missouri. At number 8, we got the Oregon Ducks. Number 7, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Number 6, the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 5, Alabama Crimson Tide. Number 4, Texas Longhorns. Number 3, Florida State. 2, Washington. 1, Michigan. That's how the rankings should be. That's just we can talk all day about point spreads and whatever they would be on a neutral field and what Vegas says, but we know how the sports rankings work, and that's what the rankings should say. Like, do I think Georgia could beat every team ranked 1 through 5? Absolutely. But they lost to Alabama, and Alabama lost to Texas, and the other teams are all undefeated. That's how the rankings work.
Okay. You're by the book. You're by the book, Matt Green. You're not throwing out the what ifs. Like the games on the field matter to Matt Green in the power poll here.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, it's like this isn't the NFL. Like, we're not trying to do power rankings and whatever. It's like we know how college football rankings could be flawed, but it's like there are flaws. It's like this is my sport. This is how it's always been flawed, and this is how we're gonna continue to do it. Like, yeah, everyone doesn't play the same schedule. Like Alabama with 1 loss, like could they be undefeated if they had Washington's schedule? Absolutely. But this is how the sport has always worked. And don't overthink it. I think Georgia, they're as good as anybody, but with how the games played out, I got them at 6. I think they're the best. Okay. Oh, I guess not best 1 loss. Best 1 loss non-conference champion this year.
There you go, Matt Green. I like it. The college football playoffs are finally here, and I just got to tell you, Matt Green, too much of a layoff. This is part of how you maybe fix bowl season, the transfer portal, and what the playoff is. Let's move these games back. Like, let's move a lot of this back. You lose a lot of momentum. They don't need a month off here. Like, let's just keep it moving. Like, part of what I would do with the playoff is the conference title games need to go. They don't do this in high school. Like high school football, you finish your region, they declare a region champ, and you go straight to the playoffs. You keep it moving. Like, I think that's what we need to do with these gigantic conferences. The NFL does not do a divisional championship game to set up the NFL playoffs. Like, I think we need
championship's like the best game of the season, like every year.
Got to get rid of it. Nope, got to get rid of it. And that's what I'm doing immediately, because you need these games to get started, man. Like, you need the portal maybe the 2 weeks after, or I don't know. That's another conversation for that.
Have you seen they just released the schedule for the CFP in 2024 and 25? The first game is like December 20th. I think the semifinals were like January 8th and January 9th, with the championship game on January 20th. Like, it's absurd what they're doing. There's literally going to be players opting out of the national championship game.
Well, the portal closes weeks prior to that.
I don't even know, but people are gonna opt out of the playoff. Like, we're going to see like a bunch of that, and that sucks so much for this sport.
I mean, what's gonna happen is we're gonna have a player play 1 round and then have to opt out for the second or third because he has to enter the portal before it. Like, that's gonna happen. There's gonna be some guys who play in 1 game and then opt out. Like Lane Kiffin was right on the money where he's like it's like throwing NFL free agency in the middle of the NFL playoffs. Like that's just what are we doing? Like no other sport operates this way. The calendar is completely screwed. It's going to be such a cluster F, and we all know it.
I feel like we were the first people to talk about the calendar being messed up. I'll be honest. Like everyone talks about it now, but I don't want to toot our own horn too much. But I feel like we were the first ones to bring this up. But
we've been talking about it for years on this program, Matt.
We really have, and it's just it's terrible what they're doing, and it feels like it gets worse every year. They had to start the playoff early if they're going to do it that way. But yeah, ending this, like I was talking about pushing the school year back or something so we could get it all in. They're talking about doing the national championship on January 20th. Like, it's just crazy.
That it is.
Grinds my gears.
Grinds both of our gears.
Let's talk about the current playoff.
The current playoff, which will not grind my gears. It's going to be a fun day. Like, I already told my wife, I'll see you the day after because Tennessee plays Iowa at 1, and then we got the 2 playoff games right after. So Monday is going to be all college football all day long. It's going to be a fun day. I'm going to be pretty cozy, pretty comfortable throughout that Monday afternoon, Matt Green. But into the evening, sir, I think we start with. I'll throw it to you. Texas at Washington or Alabama, Michigan? Who do you want to talk about first here?
Let's go Texas, Washington.
Okay.
Even though I think that's the second game. Should we go chronologically?
Isn't it kind of weird that we're doing that as the second game? Because I think I don't know. This is a good question because I think Texas, Washington's going to have a lot more juice than Alabama, Michigan. That's my hunch going into the 2 playoff games. I think Washington, Texas is going to be a thriller. I think it's going to come down to the final play. I think it's actually going to be an absolute juggernaut slugfest. I think Alabama, Michigan's going to be really ugly on both sides. I don't think it's going to be pleasant. I think both teams are going to look bad, and it's going to be one of those where it's like, oh, one of these teams might win the national title, and you still just don't feel great about them at all. Like, we haven't felt great about Michigan all year long, and we haven't felt great about Alabama's real best team in the country all year long, and I just think both of them are going to be in this gross slugfest, and then we're going to look over at Texas, Washington, and both teams putting on a clinic and just a really fun football game, back and forth, big play after big play, and I don't know. That's my gut in how these 2 games will go. But Matt Green, my question to you, why Texas will win, and then follow that up with why Washington will win this matchup. Let's play both sides here.
Let's play both sides. Well, I can't believe I've heard nobody talk about the fact that this is a rematch of the 2022 Valero Alamo Bowl that Washington pulled out 27-20 just a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not the same teams they were a year ago, but it is interesting that we did see these 2 teams play last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting how they're both kind of set up because Texas is really built very similarly to Oregon. Like, that's one of the biggest things that I kind of like. I want to pick Texas in this matchup, but it's like seeing how similar they are to Oregon, and Washington beat this Oregon team twice. I'm like, I don't know, like almost identical in total defense and scoring defense, and we know how dangerous they both are offensively. I think Texas just has so many skill players. You look at Washington, Dylan Johnson is like 70% of their rushing offense, I believe. Like, they don't have another guy with 200 yards rushing on the season. Since I'm blanking on Texas running back. Jonathan Brooks got hurt. Mm-hmm. They've had 3 different guys lead them in rushing in all 3 games. So they just have so many guys, as well as their playmakers out wide. Like, I know Washington has great playmakers, but I feel like I trust Texas's playmakers more. Like, I don't know. I keep going back and forth. What do you think? What is the biggest advantage you think Texas has?
I think the biggest advantage that Texas has right now is the talent differential. Like, I think they're deeper than Washington. I think Washington's very top heavy. I think Washington has a lot of top end talent at receiver, at offensive line, even at quarterback. But I think Texas has bodies. Texas has guys, if things get banged up, they're going to be able to throw a multitude of dudes and be able to rotate and be able to wear down this Washington offensive line to a point that we haven't seen them get worn down. But Washington's offensive line just won the best offensive line in the country award. Like, I'm very fascinated to see how that group matches up with the best defensive front they've played this year. Oregon's good, but Texas has
Joe Moore award-winning O-line hasn't fared well the last couple playoffs.
No, and I think they're not going to have the same. Like, they played well as a unit. I think Texas has a very strong chance of winning in the trenches here. So I think that's something that's it's a big part of what Texas is going to try and do here. But Texas is 94th in passing defense this year, Matt Green. Michael Penix in 4 games against ranked teams, he has 8 passing touchdowns. I think something that's going to be very important in this game, and we're going to find out pretty early if Washington's going to be able to pull this off, is Michael Penix has 18 TDs, 5 picks. I was going through all the different Michael Penix and Washington offensive stats and yards and downs and different things like that. They're really good and explosive on first down. They're a good first down team. They take deep shots. They're going for the jugular often, and when Penix is able to do that, they're just really, really elite early. You want to get a crazy stat for you that I found, Matt Green, going through the numbers?
Yeah.
Washington has not trailed by 8+ points in any game this year.
That's impressive.
Not like they haven't really been faced with adversity to this point. Like, they have been in tight games. We talked about
all these games have been tight though.
Yeah.
They've been in some barn burners.
But they've never had to come back from a big deficit. They've never been like punched in the mouth, down 2 scores, anything like that. We haven't seen what they do. So I'm very curious what that looks like if Texas is up 17-7 in the second quarter or something, and things go awry a little bit early for Washington and on a neutral site here. But I mean, against Oregon, they beat Oregon twice.
Mention that.
Yeah.
Hold on. It's funny you mentioned that because last 4 games, Washington's won 4 straight games by 7 points or less. Last 3 games have been by 3 points or less. Texas's last 7, they have 3 games that have been decided by one score. All 3 of those games, they had a 20-point lead at one point. So their only close games, they pretty much blew big leads in all of them. So and one of those was with Malik Murphy starting. But I don't know. It's so like if they get big on Washington, like Washington easily has the firepower to get right back in it if Texas is going to be blowing leads. So that's another interesting dynamic with these two teams. They're just so evenly matched.
They are. I will say too. I think Sark's a better recruiter. I think Sark's a good coach. I think he's kind of underrated now by some folks, but I do think Kalen DeBoer is a better coach. I think Kalen DeBoer, I think Washington has the coaching advantage in this game, at least on the offensive side of the ball. I think Washington's receivers are going to cook Texas's corners in this game. I think Washington's going to be able to score on Texas. I think Texas is going to have a tough time dealing with the perimeter guys. Just a lot of NFL talent on the outside for UW here. 6 red zone trips, 4 TDs, 2 field goals against Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. They're elite in the red zone. They finish drives. They don't make a lot of mistakes. Like we talked about, they don't get down. They don't put themselves in bad holes early. They haven't had to come from behind because they've been a great team all year long. I don't think Washington is winning the national title, Matt Green. But I talked about it. I've been high on Texas this whole year. I've been high on this group. Matt Green, I don't think Texas is beating Washington. I think this is going to come down to the final drive. Quinn Ewers having to do something to try and win this game for Texas late, and maybe he just doesn't pull it off. But right now, I think this is going to be the game of the day between the two. I think this will be a much more entertaining game. I think this will be a much more high-scoring explosion, just huge chunk play city action in this one. But I think
Play city action.
Chunk play city. I just don't think Texas is going to win. The more I've thought about it, the more time I've had to chew on this. I think this is a bad matchup for Texas. I think Texas's secondary is going to get cooked. I think Michael Penix will have some time here to dice this Texas defense up. And I don't think Texas's offense is going to be able to keep pace. So ultimately, give me Washington 38, Texas 34 in this one. I think Washington ultimately keeps their undefeated streak alive, survives Texas in this one, and they play for a national title. Now, that being said, I don't think they're going to win the national title, so I think whoever wins Michigan, Alabama is winning the national title. That's what I can't shake over the last week or so. Matt Green diving more and more into the numbers and just where I'm at with all four of these teams. But what say you? Are you with me on Washington ultimately surviving here and getting the victory, or are you going Texas?
I agree with one part that you said, that I feel like this isn't the best matchup for Texas. I feel like Texas gives Michigan or Alabama a lot more problems because of their ability to kind of not have as good of a defense as those two teams, but be comparable and just be so much more explosive offensively. Washington, they're just kind of built in a very similar way. And I honestly, part of me wants to pick Washington. I feel like they're being kind of slept on. Texas is only a 4-point favorite. It's not like they're a huge lopsided favorite or anything. It feels like the public is definitely feeling Texas. But I think I'm going to have to agree. I think with the public, I'm going Texas to win this game just because, man, they just have so many weapons. These guys, and I know Washington's weapons are good too, but Texas, their ability to stay balanced, I think goes a long way. If Washington is able to do what they did against Oregon, where they just basically kept their offense off the field for the first 2 quarters of the game, and then kind of run some clock the way they were able to and play keep away, that's going to be the same strategy they'll have to take to beat Texas. But this offense, as good as Oregon's offense was this year, I feel like a lot of it was inflated against, some of those terrible teams they dropped 70 on and things like that. They were a really good team, but Quinn Ewers is just a so much better thrower of the football than Bo Nix, in my opinion, just downfield. These two receivers that Texas has just on the outside. Like, we know about AD Mitchell in college football playoff games. He's 4-0 and he's caught a touchdown in every single one of them. I'm going to go Texas by almost the exact same score. I'm going Texas 37, Washington 33. And it's going to be an amazing game for sure.
All right. Well, we disagree here. I didn't think we would disagree right out of the gate here. Now I'm curious if we disagree on both college football playoff matchups here. Matt Green, why Alabama will beat Michigan in this heavyweight fight between two of the nation's best, two of the deepest teams in the country, two of the stingiest teams in the country, two of the best coaches in the country. What say you? Why will Michigan win this game, and why will Alabama ultimately win this game to start out?
So before I get into this game, I want to throw some stats out at you. SEC is 4-1 versus the Big Ten in the college football playoff to this point, in the 4-team playoff era. This is the 4th time now that Michigan and Alabama have played in a bowl game. However, all 4 of those matchups were in the state of Florida. So we're seeing the Rose Bowl. That's more Big Ten country, even though it's, I guess now it technically is, with UCLA being in the Big Ten. But we'll see. Michigan loves the Rose Bowl. So I look at this matchup and I feel like Michigan played like a 3-game season. Like, maybe you throw in Maryland and it was like a 4-game season, but it feels like until whatever the year that they played Penn State, what was it, like November 10th or something? It feels like that's when their season started. And during those 3 games, I didn't add the Maryland game in there, versus Ohio State, Michigan, and versus Ohio State, Penn State, and Iowa. Michigan averaged 3.8 yards per carry in those 3 games. I think Alabama has a better run defense than any of those teams. Like, statistically, they might not, but whatever, Big Ten, all those teams have like the same defense. It's crazy. But Alabama is just so physical on the defensive line. Like, I don't see Michigan having success consistently running on Alabama in this game at all. And if it comes down to JJ McCarthy, like literally what I said Penn State had to do, what I said Ohio State had to do, make JJ McCarthy win the game. Neither one of those teams made JJ McCarthy win the game, and Michigan was able to win. I think there's no way that they can win versus Alabama without JJ McCarthy like having to be the one that makes some plays. And personally, I don't think JJ McCarthy can make those plays. But I mean, I don't see JJ McCarthy going 7 for 11 for 65 yards and then beating Alabama. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that's possible. So I think they're going to have to get something out of their passing game. And with what this Alabama secondary has been as of late, like, I don't know. You just have to go back. Like, Alabama, it's hard to judge because if we're judging their body of work, like, they've had a lot of unimpressive performances. Like, I mean, they're a 4th and 31 away from not even being in this game. So you look at them, and Auburn was able to run for 200 yards on them. And it's like, yeah, do we just kind of throw that out? Like, it's the Iron Bowl. It's crazy. That's definitely our SEC bias coming in. But I just have to go back to what they did against Georgia the most recently on a neutral site. And that was one of the best offenses in college football this year. And they were only able to get 24 points. One of those touchdowns being scored 3-4 minutes left in the game. So if Georgia's only able to score 24 points on Alabama, I don't know how Michigan can possibly break the 20-point mark. No,
and those are all great points. And I think it is really hard to see Michigan winning this game if JJ McCarthy does not outplay Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe, I think what's funny too is, like, I still just don't feel great about this team and either team really. And I wrote down, like, why doesn't Michigan feel better than they were a year ago? Like, it's not like a whole lot's changed. Blake Corum's healthy now. Like, they lost Blake Corum last year, and you still felt better about him.
Game. The run game just is not. I feel like it's the run game. It's just not as dominant. Like, what did Corum have like a year ago? Like 1,800 yards and like 20 something touchdowns, and Donovan Edwards was also like flirting with like 1,000 yards. Like, it was an insane rushing attack a year ago. And this year it's just been fine. It feels like they've been, kind of on autopilot half the season. So you don't really know. Like, they're probably going to pull out some wrinkles in some game like that they haven't really had to use because they, like we said, they played like a 3-game season. And I mean, honestly, they played a 2-game season because Iowa, they scored 10 points in the first quarter against Iowa and probably wrapped it up right there. It's like, okay, we scored enough to win this game. So you probably can't even learn that much from that game. So I think Michigan has to be saving something for this Alabama game. So, I mean, we might be sleeping on them because we haven't seen what this offense is truly capable of yet.
I mean, Blake Corum had another 1,000-yard rushing year, 24 touchdowns, and it just didn't feel like it, like, at all. It's so weird. And then Bill Connolly.
Well, like 18 of them were like 2-yard touchdowns.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, it just doesn't feel like Blake Corum had a dominant year like he did a year ago, where he was a Heisman frontrunner for most of the year. And Michigan's not like they fell off and they were worse. It's just really weird how I feel about Michigan compared to a year ago and the narrative surrounding Michigan. But according to, I saw Bill Connolly of ESPN, his S&P Plus. Did you see this? They give his model gives Michigan a 69% chance to beat Alabama on Monday night. So I think it's interesting, the numbers like Michigan, but it also speaks to Alabama is not the Alabama of old. It doesn't matter that they beat Georgia, and it kind of speaks to what you're saying. They have beaten Georgia and Auburn by a combined 6 points in their last 2 games. Like you said, they needed an absolute prayer and meltdown from Auburn late inside Jordan Hare to even get in this spot to begin with. Who knows how the Georgia game goes if they review that catch and everything else. Like, who knows if you play that game 100 times, how many times Alabama beats Georgia on a neutral site. Who knows? We'll never know. But, like, either way, this never felt like you got stomped at home by a great college football playoff team in Texas, but it still happened at home. You struggle at USF. You struggle at against Arkansas in the middle of the year, a bad Arkansas team. A&M gave you problems. It wasn't like you were able to walk all over A&M. Tennessee was up double digits at the half in Tuscaloosa, took a 28-0 meltdown from Tennessee in the second half to get that win. Like, there's just so many bullet points. It's like, this Alabama team is not the Alabama of old. It's not even like the Greg McElroy, A.J. McCarron type years, the Blake Sims. They're not that dominant. This is not a dominant group on both sides of the ball. And Jalen Milroe is playing better than he did a year ago. But, like, I even seen, like, going into next year, he's a Heisman favorite. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's the case for Jalen Milroe and this Alabama group. And I think they're playing better football now. I think Alabama is one of the 4 best teams in college football this year. But I don't think it's a slam dunk they win this game. Like, the issue is, like, Michigan's 74th in passing offense, to your point. Michigan, Matt Green, has thrown 1 touchdown pass against a ranked team this year. 1! Like, I just don't know. It doesn't mean they can't. It just means they've played, like you said, a 2-game schedule against nothing. So we don't know what they're going to do against a team like Alabama, because they really haven't been tested. I mean, Penn State has a better defense than Alabama, I would say, by and large this year. They were elite all across the board. They played really well there. But 1 touchdown pass since October, Matt Green. They've thrown 1 touchdown pass since October ended. But they also have the number 1 scoring defense in college football this year. I go back and forth on this one where I'm like, I don't think either of these 2 teams are elite, like this dominant force that are just going to run through the playoff. Like, people who think if Washington wins the Texas game, they're going to get rolled by whoever wins Michigan, Alabama. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case. I think Washington or Texas is going to give them a big time game. And I don't think it's a guarantee that either of these 2 teams who win the national title. I think this is a very, very open Final Four. And I think it's a lot more open than a lot of SEC fans think, that Alabama's, it's just a guarantee Bama's winning both these games and the SEC streak is continuing. Do you agree?
I tend to agree with what you're saying. Like, I don't think these are just like obviously they are elite. Like, these are maybe the 2 best defenses in all of college football. Like, these are elite teams.
You think Bama is one of the 2 best defenses in college football?
I think Alabama's right up there. I mean, this defense is...
You think they're better than Penn State?
Yeah, I'm taking Alabama over Penn State. Like, I mean, Penn State's right there, but they're the elite of the elite defenses.
Are you taking Florida State? I'm taking Florida State's defense over Alabama.
I don't know about that. I think this Alabama defense has been much better than they have the last couple years. And regardless, I think they're up there with the best. And I think it's offensively, just neither team is what we're used to seeing a national championship team being. I mean, these are like just pretty average offenses with really good defenses. And I would say elite defenses. So it's hard for me to pinpoint. Like, you're talking about simulations and whatever. I don't feel like you can have an accurate, you can quantify Jalen Milroe, because you look at him and like how well he plays quarterback, and I think he's like an average quarterback. Like, I don't think he's like a great player. He's maybe the best athlete I've ever seen at the quarterback position, next to like Lamar Jackson or like Cam Newton. Like, just an absolute absurd raw athlete, just insanely explosive. But it's all his little ad-lib stuff is that really what sets this offense off. Because you look at that Georgia game and a lot in that Auburn game, like, they weren't throwing for a ton of yards. They weren't running for a ton of yards. It was just like, 3rd and 5, pick up chunk play here. And it's like, they just kind of found ways to win. And this team, it feels like I'm not going to say it's 2009, because obviously he's a different athlete than Greg McElroy. And that defense was like, statistically, just historically great, but it feels more like one of those Alabama teams that's kind of when you could still argue that they might be overachieving a little bit before they just had first rounders at every single level of their team. Like, it feels like the most overachieving Alabama team we've seen under Nick Saban. And that's why if it comes down to 2 physical teams that are going to play the same style, like, it's hard to pick against Nick Saban, especially when one's got JJ McCarthy that I'm just still not impressed by after 13 games this season, and Jalen Milroe, who's just like the ultimate X factor. Like, Jalen Milroe could turn it over twice in his own territory, and Michigan could bust this thing open early. Like, I think Jalen Milroe has a lot of boom or bust potential, but I think he's got a lot of that just, take off and pick up a 50-yard play with his legs and just run around and find the open man, because you just have to be spying him with 2 guys at all times. So if I'm going to trust anyone, McCarthy over Milroe, I do give the nod to Milroe.
All right. So where are you going? Where is your pick, Matt Green?
I'm going with the Alabama Crimson Tide, 20-17. I think this game, like you said, it's going to be low scoring. I think these two defenses are going to kind of flex for most of the game. But I think Alabama's just going to find a way to win like they've kind of done a lot this season.
Matt Green, we're going to disagree again.
Oh,
the SEC shouldn't have been in the playoff to begin with, Matt Green. They shouldn't have got in. Florida State should have had this spot. I think there's a reason they shouldn't have got in. Because this was a flawed conference this year. It was a flawed conference at the top. I still think Georgia was the best SEC team this year. I think if you play Georgia, Alabama 100 times on neutral site, Georgia wins a lot more than 50% of those games. I think, look, man, Michigan has not been tested to this point. I like their depth. I like where they're at scoring defense-wise. I think this is a better matchup. Like, TCU gashed them. Like, Max Duggan was playing like a Heisman. He played exceptional football against this Michigan defense. I think this kind of, like what we saw Texas do against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Michigan can do that. Michigan has the dudes. Michigan has the bodies to play that same kind of style.
Oh, they do not have the receivers or the quarterback.
We don't know. J.J. McCarthy hasn't done anything. Like, they don't have to. You just have the two running backs and you have the offensive line. You have the best defense. I think Harbaugh's a smart coach where Harbaugh doesn't, like, there's a reason there was a drop-off with J.J. McCarthy when Harbaugh wasn't around. Like, you saw the stats with and without Harbaugh for J.J. J.J.'s a better quarterback with Harbaugh on the sidelines helping him out. I don't think they're going to lose this game. I think Michigan is going to win this football game, and I think they're going to win it close. I think this is going to be ugly. I think this is going to be low scoring. I think they're going to play keep away. I think this is going to be a ground and pound, very physical ball game. I think Milroe is going to make some mistakes. I think we're going to see that, like, Milroe is not the Heisman guy. He's not a Bryce Young. He's going to be very mercurial. He's going to do some dumb stuff, and I think it's going to cost them in this game against an elite defense like Michigan's on a neutral site. So I think this is a good matchup for Michigan because I just don't think the Isaiah Bonds of the world are scare this Michigan secondary all that much. I think they're going to be okay. Like, I think this is a good matchup for Michigan. I think people read way too much into them being devastated when they saw Alabama on the screen during the college football playoff selection show. I think Michigan's going to be okay.
That didn't look great.
No. I just think Michigan's going to win this game, and I think Michigan's going to win the national title. So I think Michigan wins here. Matt Green, give me Michigan 27, Alabama 24.
Put it on the board. Wow. It would be very ironic, and I don't even want Alabama fans to have this I don't know, card to play. But the fact that Jim Harbaugh did this Georgia session of practice, like beating Georgia, made all this thing about beating Georgia, and then you get matched up with Alabama, and if they were to beat you, that's just gonna look real embarrassing. That, like, no, it's not about beating Georgia. You still got to beat us.
They're due, man. They're due because Michigan, they keep getting in there, haven't won a playoff game yet. They're due, man. And I just feel like this is where it works out.
They do have the experience on their side, and like back-to-back playoff appearances, like you can't understate how important that is. JJ McCarthy watched the celebration in the Fiesta Bowl. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're going to watch the celebration from the year before, that automatically means you're going to win the following season. I think that's what it means, at least, unless they just don't show it. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be a good game. I think like you were kind of saying, I still feel like we weren't wrong in our evaluation of Alabama, but the SEC as a whole didn't have enough teams to really expose them. So, you know, I think there's a legitimate chance that Michigan's defense is better on the line of scrimmage than Georgia, and they give Alabama a lot harder time moving the ball.
Absolutely. All right, Matt Green. Well, there we go. College football playoff. Our next pod will be after the college football playoff, going into the national title game the following Monday. But so we'll be back
also,
next week.
I don't know if you know, but the playoff games actually count like times 10.
Oh, that's not. No.
for the pick 'em, if I win these playoff games, that could really, there's a multiplier effect that could really change up the standings. I just wanted to give you a heads up before it happened.
Good to know, Matt Green.
But yeah, shout out to the Orange Bowl, the Dogs, and Seminoles for the game that no one really wants to watch. But I'll have to watch it myself.
You're watching. You're gonna be up for it. You're gonna be excited. Like you're gonna get up for this game.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be until like an hour before kickoff. You're like, okay, my team's about to play. I'm gonna watch and be into it. But it's a hard game to get into for sure. It's a hard game to get into if players aren't opting out because you're just disappointed of not being in the playoff and it just doesn't mean anything. But with the just the ridiculous volume of players that have opted out of, I've like never seen a playoff game with this many guys in the portal or draft just not going to play, hurt. Like it's bizarre.
Yeah. Well, look, here's to it, Matt Green. It's gonna be fun, and I pity your text messages that you're gonna get throughout Monday afternoon as Nico Mania runs wild all over the state of Florida, Matt Green. How many?
Is that Monday?
Yeah, it's Monday. It's literally before the
Tennessee, Iowa. Games. How about Tennessee, Iowa? Contrasting styles. What's the over under on that one?
I mean, the spread's only
it's got to be the highest
6.
over under. It's got to be the highest over under in like 6 weeks for Iowa, or maybe all season. They've been in the 20s like the last 4 or 5 weeks.
That might be true. Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.